family wanted to hear from him, and he wanted to say it. I think it should have happened in a private setting, and that we tried, and that wasn't afforded to us, so that's the way it worked.
In a surprise move, George Zimmerman took the stand at his bond hearing, apologized to Trayvon Martin's parents. Tracy Martin and Sabrina Fulton were in the courtroom today, and we're told they didn't seem to be necessarily moved by the apology. They left the courtroom right after the hearing was over and did not speak to the media. Listen to what their attorney said on their behalf.
Zimmerman makes this self-serving apology in court 50 days later. The real George Zimmerman website, and you all have reviewed it, never once said I'm sorry. Why today, when he made all those statements to the police, why not show remorse there if he was sincerely apologetic for killing this unarmed child?
That was the most disappointing aspect of this whole proceeding to me, because the witness stand is used for evidence. There was no mention that he wanted to address the family. There was no evidence offered. If he's going to address the family, then he should have addressed it all. Tell the family what happened, not one of the 5 stories that he's purported to have told the police. This was the most disingenuous, unsincere thing that I have ever seen. It was insulting to the family who is sitting there grieving and for the first time hearing about their son and what happened in the 5 stories that Zimmerman gave to the police. So for him to get on the stand and object to any other questions about relative evidence, but to give a statement that is addressed to the family, not to the judge, not to offer into evidence, when he had an opportunity to wait until he's on a world court and to wait until the cameras are there, to wait until all the media is there watching. There's a time and a place, and I think everyone knows when you give an apology, the time and the place is to do it face-to-face, sincerely, and you make it meaningful. This was the most unmeaningful apology we've ever seen in our entire life.
Zimmerman's attorney says as long as he's been on the case, George Zimmerman has always wanted to apologize to Trayvon's family. Let me go back down to Gene Casares, who was inside the courtroom today for all of this in Sanford, Florida, Seminole County Courthouse. Gene, describe for us the family, Trayvon Martin's parents, inside that courtroom today, what their impact was.
Well, let me start off with when they entered the courtroom. I mean, everyone was in the courtroom. It was close to the proceedings starting, and then they just came in, and it was the family. It was the mother and the father of Trayvon, also Trayvon's aunt. His mother's sister was there, and their attorneys, and the presence was so strong. I mean, they are a family that when they're there, you know it, you feel it. And they held hands during the hearing. Trayvon's mother and father were arm in arm during the hearing, and then they get what they consider 2 big blows, an apology that they don't like, and $150,000 bail granted. They stood up at the conclusion of this hearing. The judge was still on the bench. He hadn't even left the bench. They stood up and they left with a vengeance. They wanted out, and they left quickly. It was just apparent how upset they were.
So, Mark Nejam, how does this impact everything when you've got Trayvon Martin's parents not accepting George Zimmerman's apology today?
Well, I mean, there's 2 different things to look at, Vinny. You've got the court of public opinion, and you've got the court of law. I think in the court of law, it makes no difference. I think in the court of public opinion, people are going to evaluate it very simply. I think Mark O'Mara's attempt was to humanize George Zimmerman from all the press reports that we've heard that have really indicated otherwise. I think one very telling thing that came out was that apparently for the last couple of years he was mentoring young African-American children, unbeknownst to many people. These are all the humanizing aspects. So now we're going to start seeing the personalities coming out, and people are going to start developing opinions. And I think there's a shifting in opinions back and forth, because as facts and evidence unfold, we're going to start, evaluating things differently and seeing where we ultimately land. But I think in the court of law, it's not going to make any difference.
Sonny Hostin, it had to be difficult for Trayvon Martin's parents to be inside the court. This is the first time they're in the room, same room with the guy who shot and killed their son, right? And we see it all the time with victims' families. What ultimately, though, do you think? The family, they're going to be there. They're going to be in that courtroom. When and if there's a trial, they're going to be in the courtroom. When there's a stand your ground motion, they're going to be in the courtroom. How much of an impact do you think they have in this case? I mean, their impact's been huge so far.
Yeah.
If they don't speak up, we're not where we are today.
Yeah, I think they're going to continue certainly to have that presence at any court proceeding. I think the presence is going to be significant. I know that, I spoke to Tracy Martin and asked him how he was doing it. Every time I ask him that, he says, I'm doing this for Trayvon. So there's no question that you see that united front. One thing I think that hasn't been mentioned, Vinny, is the fact that now that there has been bond and that Zimmerman will be out, I think one of the things that we will see is a slowing down of this process, right? Because now Mark O'Mara doesn't have that client in prison pushing things, asking for reports, asking for this to be sped along. So I think now, perhaps it'll be 2, 3, 4 months before we hear anything. And I think that's going to be very difficult for this family, for the Martin family.
Absolutely. Diana Tennis, it's going to be the long haul for the family, and victims' families have to understand that. I mean, things don't move along at a rapid pace down there in Florida.
Right, and I think where they are emotionally today isn't necessarily where they're going to be emotionally 6 months from now. If their lawyers were telling them going into this hearing that young man was not going to get a bond, they were not doing that family a service, because that is setting them up for disappointment, and that doesn't help. And likewise, fomenting the anger and the hatred doesn't really help when it's becoming obvious this wasn't the cold-blooded killing that it might have looked like a few weeks ago.